Hello everyone. In our previous videos, we have discussed about vulnerability assessment using Nessus and OpenVAS vulnerability scanners. In this section, we'll introduce Metasploit framework. Now in this section, we'll learn about setting up Metasploit, understand the payloads and exploits. We'll also see how to import the Nessus results into Metasploits and then how we can perform scanning using Metasploit directly. We'll talk about the Metasploit interfaces and the usage of Metasploit. In the first video of this section, we'll learn about setting up Metasploit. In this video, we'll go through a few buzzwords related to Metasploit. We'll see how to start Metasploit framework and we'll have an understanding about the Metasploit architecture. Talking about the buzzwords, if you have been into penetration testing and already started learning about it, then I'm sure that you have heard these words quite frequently: vulnerability, exploit and payload. Now, if we go by the definition, a vulnerability is any weakness that exists in the target system through which a penetration can successfully occur. An exploit is a code or a script that gets executed on the target system, helping an attacker take advantage of the vulnerability on the particular machine. And the payload is that code which is initiated by the attacker subsequent to an exploit in order to maintain access on the target system or in order to get benefit or data out of the target machine. Now, if you want to understand these three terms by an analogy, we can take an example. So let's say I am a thief and I want to rob a building. Now I cannot do so during the daytime because there would be guards around the building doing a check on everyone that enters. So I need to first explore and see the way to enter into it or the different ways through which I can enter the building. Now let's say suppose I locate a window on the backside of the building, but still I cannot enter into it during the daytime, so I decide to do it during the night. Now during the night also, if I want to enter into that building, I need to first break that window, and for doing so I would need something like a hammer. So I can now say that the window is the weakness of the building and the hammer which I'll be using to break into the window is the exploit. Now once I'm inside the building, I want to steal data or I want to steal cash or something, so I need to see how I can do it. So if I'm carrying a bag, depending on the size of the bag, depending on the quality of the bag, I need to decide what I can steal and what I can't. So we can say that that particular bag is a payload for me. Once I'm done with this, I can move out of the building, but before moving out, I can obviously clear my logs by removing the CCTV footage or just damaging the CCTV cameras. So now if you relate the terms with the example, we understand that the window was the weakness in the building that allowed me to enter into it. So that is a vulnerability. Same ways for any system. The exploit for our example was the hammer, which was used to enter into the building or which was used to break through the vulnerability. And once I was into the building, I used the bag to collect the data. So in the same way, once I'm into a system, I use a payload which allows me to move through the system and collect the data which I want to. Now, if you want to use Metasploit, we have to perform these steps in the sequence. We first start the Kali PostgreSQL service, then we initialize the Metasploit PostgreSQL database, and then finally we launch the Metasploit console in Kali. We'll come back to the architecture later. Before that, we'll see how to start Metasploit. So I quickly move into my Kali machine. So once I'm in the machine, I open the terminal and the first command to start the PostgreSQL service would be service PostgreSQL is start. Once you run the command, it will start the PostgreSQL service. Next is to initialize the Metasploit Postgre database, and for doing so I would run the msfdb space init and this would initialize. Now since I have already executed this command earlier, it says the database appears to be already configured, but if you're doing it for the first time, it will initialize the database for you. And then if I want to launch the Metasploit console, I just need to type in the command msf console. Press enter and this should boot up the console. So we can see the msf console has started and this is what Metasploit looks like. And the current version of Metasploit installed on Kali Linux is version 4.11, which has around 1518 exploits, 877 auxiliaries and so on. Moving on, when we talk about the Metasploit architecture, it has its libraries, it has different interfaces, various modules, tools and plugins. Talking about these components, now if you look at the bottom, we have the modules which Metasploit has. Modules like exploits, As we have already understood earlier, an exploit is any code which works on the target machine. These are the exploits which actually use the payloads. If there is any exploit which doesn't need a payload, it would be called as an auxiliary module. The payloads are the modules that consist of the code that would be running on the remote target machine. The encoders are the modules which ensure that payloads make it to their destination. That means how would the payload actually reach the target machine? There should be some medium. It could be some other code, other scripts, and so on. So that is what encoders do. They just make sure that the payload will reach it. And NOPs keep the payload size consistent. Discussing about the libraries, the Metasploit framework library helps us to run our exploits without having to write additional code for the rudimentary tasks such as HTTP requests or encoding of payloads. So the Metasploit framework library has everything inbuilt for making our work easier. The Rex part is the basic library for most of the tasks, and it handles the sockets, protocols, and other things like SSL, HTTP, and so on. The MSF core provides the basic API and it defines the Metasploit framework, and the MSF base provides the friendly API and provides the simplified APIs for use in the framework. So these libraries have been segregated depending on what they can provide as a feature. The Metasploit has various tools and plugins also inbuilt so that we can use Metasploit in an easy way. There are different interfaces available for using Metasploit. The console is the one which we have just launched by using the MSF console command. You can also use Metasploit by the command line interface using MSF CLI. There is a web interface available for Metasploit. There is a GUI, and there is a different project developed for Metasploit framework, which is Armitage. We will be discussing a few of them in our discussing more about the architecture of Metasploit. If we go into the directories on our Kali machine, we'll see that the Metasploit framework file system is laid out into an intuitive manner and is organized by directories. So let's quickly check this path of the Metasploit directory. So I'll quickly go into my Kali machine again. So I need to move into the path of USR, share, and you'll see inside this there would be a folder, a directory for Metasploit framework. So here is the Metasploit framework, and once I move into this, you can see there are different directories over here, and inside this directory you will find one with the name modules, which has the auxiliaries, encoders, exploits, and NOPs, payloads, and whatever we have discussed earlier. Now here we will see that the directories or the directory with the name data contains the editable files used by Metasploit. The library is the meat of the framework code base. The modules contain the modules as we have already seen. The plugins directory would contain those plugins that can be loaded at runtime depending on what we are trying to exploit. The scripts contains the scripts like Metasploiter and other scripts that can be used during the attack, and the tools contain the various useful command line utilities which can be used along with Metasploit.